I was pretty worried about RiME, I've got to be honest with you. The game, I think, won a lot of hearts when Sony first announced it in 2013, owing to the fact that it looked a lot like a Team ICO title, at a time when The Last Guardian was, in limbo. But lots of scary rumours emerged after Sony decided to drop the project, and I think a lot of anticipation dissipated almost immediately. Tequila Works has talked a little about how difficult that period was for it as a team, and I think they've responded in the perfect way because RiME is a joy, and I'm going to tell you why in this video. But before I get into the full review, please do like this video if you enjoy it, and remember to subscribe to the channel for more PS4 content. I really appreciate you being here with me, so without further ado, let's get into the review. So, for those of you who don't know, RiME is essentially a puzzle platformer for the PS4. It's hard to talk about this game without mentioning the likes of ICO, Journey, The Last Guardian and The Witness, and while I really don't like constantly comparing different games, I feel like this title invites those comparisons, and so it's fair game. The most important thing is that it does all of them justice, and while I don't feel like it hits the highs of any of the titles I've just mentioned, it's perhaps worth pointing out that we're talking about some of the greatest games of all time here. For RiME to even be in the same breath of them means it's pretty bloody good. And to be clear, it is very good. Now, I should preface this review by being upfront and honest. I haven't actually finished the game at the time of recording. Because of the lead time on video stuff, I'm actually just over halfway through the title, but I'll probably have finished it by the time you're actually watching this. I have chatted with Push Square's reviewer Stephen Tailby in depth about the title though, and we're both very much on the same page with this one. You can read his full review on pushsquare.com, and I'll link it in the description, so do check that out. I should also add that we were asked by the developer to only capture footage from the first level, so that's all you're seeing in this video. There's much more to it though, of course. So what is it that makes RiME so good? Well, let's talk about the structure a little bit first. This is a minimalistic adventure with very little in the way of instruction or help. The game does guide you, but it does so in a very subtle manner, which I personally really appreciate. A lot of the game comes down to experimentation, and while the puzzles never build a brick wall between you and your progression, the difficulty is pitched perfectly to provide those all-important aha moments without ever really impeding you. I think it strikes the same balance as a game like Inside, which is just about tough enough to make you think, but never so difficult that you feel you can't move forwards. And personally, I just think the puzzles are pretty clever. There's a lot of perspective stuff a la The Witness, so you're kind of lining up shadows, objects, changing the time of day, and just trying to perceive the world in a different way. And these challenges are bookmarked by platforming, which actually works similarly to Uncharted in a way. Now, I will say that the controls are very cumbersome and the camera's quite swimmy, so it doesn't always feel as good as it should, and if you factor in a Dicey Framerate, you've got some of the worst elements of a Team ICO title on display. But it looks absolutely sensational. While I'm not overly keen on the main character's design, the world is lavish and it's filled with bright colours and nifty little visual effects. I've been playing on the PS4 Pro, and while I honestly couldn't tell you if it's been patched to take advantage of the supercharged hardware or not, the image quality is among some of the cleanest I've ever seen. And let me tell you, the beautiful artwork is not the only presentational triumph here. The soundtrack is absolutely stunning, and in a year that's had Gravity Rush 2 and Horizon Zero Dawn pump out some amazing orchestral music, I think this is probably my favourite of 2017 so far. The only thing that really lets down the presentation is its animation. Obviously, Fumito Ueda, the director of Team ICO's games, is an animator by trade, and I think it's the animation that's always defined his games. I mean, The Last Guardian is basically all about the animation, as that's the only way the game is able to sell you on the relationship between the boy and the bird. And this game really tries to communicate through its animations as well, such as the jaunty way the protagonist runs downstairs, for example, but it just isn't anywhere near as successful, and I actually blame some of the shoddy animation work for the controls feeling so cumbersome and unsatisfying. But in a game with no real fail states that's all about exploration, it's actually not the end of the world, and one thing I like about the game is that while it generally always lays the breadcrumbs to get you where you need to be, there's this constant sense of isolation and a feeling of being lost. It's hard to describe, but the game uses really large levels, all with different themes and ideas, and you're kind of free to go where you want in them. And while there's no obvious path and direction that the title generally wants you to go in, there's this constant sense of doubt that you're in the wrong place, which may sound like a negative, but I think it actually is one of the main features of the game. So yeah, it's a pretty lovely game, to be brutally frank with you. The pace is very laid back and relaxed, though it does have its moments of excitement as well, and its story is ambiguous and open for interpretation. Perhaps the only major criticism I'd throw at it is that it's very derivative. In many ways, it feels like a love letter to Journey and ICO, and while that's certainly no bad thing, I don't feel like it ever really finds its own voice as a result. It certainly hasn't yet for me. I think the thing about Journey and ICO is that they're so original, they're almost, for want of a better word, kind of iconic. And you look at some of the art for this game and you could almost imagine it being fan art for either of the aforementioned games. That's not to say that it's not beautiful, because it absolutely is, but it's hard to look at it without thinking of other titles. But I must admit, I wasn't looking forward to starting RiME at all. I got my review code through and I was playing Injustice 2 at the time, and I almost had to tear myself away. But I can't stress this enough, I love Team ICO. They make my favourite games, and as soon as I started this, it grabbed me in the same way Ueda's games do. And that's probably the highest praise I can possibly give it, because you get a Ueda game, every couple of times a decade if you're lucky, and while this isn't at that same level, it's still very good and invokes all the same feelings. And it does make me wonder, why did Sony drop this? That's Edith Finch and RiME in a short period of time, both of which have actually exceeded my expectations and would have been bright feathers in Sony's already crowded 2017 plume. I don't know, I guess the most important thing is that the game got finished and the quality is top notch, right? Do let me know if you're planning to pick up RiME in the comments section, and remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Until next time though, thank you so much for watching.